Today I'm playing the worst Zelda game to find out if it's actually trash. And what's crazy is that the game I'm playing is actually a sequel to one of the most popular Zelda games of all time. On a random Sunday afternoon, I sat down and thought, I wonder what the worst Zelda game is. Wait a minute, that's actually a great video idea. Scouring Reddit posts, gaming articles, YouTube videos, you know it. And although there were games that were technically worse, this game intrigued me. You see, I recognized its art style. In fact, I'm sure you did as well. This game was the sequel to Wind Waker, one of the most popular Zelda games in the entire series. And yet, this game was consistently being rated as one of the worst, if not the worst one in the Zelda franchise. This made me very curious. Now I had to find out why. And thus this video was born. Now listen, this isn't going to be a boring old gameplay video of me just playing through the game, alright? I've done a deep dive. I've gone into the game's history, its production process, how the creators felt about it, and why it was ultimately destined to fail. Oh, that is a lot. But you're also gonna get my personal thoughts on the game. Everything from gameplay, story, design, and so much more. But the question is, how was this game created in the first place? The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker released on December 13, 2002, and is one of the most beloved games in the Zelda franchise. It consistently finds itself in the top 10 Zelda games on almost any list you can find out there. People praise its unique art style and amazing music, as well as its mechanics and world building. Having sold 4.6 million copies, it is in fact one of the most popular Zelda games. After its success, people wanted more, and fast. 4 years passed, and on June 23, 2007, The Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass was released. Fans eager to continue the story, the game flew off shelves, becoming the best-selling game in Japan in its first month, and would go on to rival Wind Waker with an impressive 4.1 million copies sold. However, after what would seem like the perfect start to a game, things started to go downhill. Now, when it comes to the actual development of the game, we gotta go back a little. Earlier, I said that Wind Waker was one of the most popular Zelda games of all time, and it's true. However, it doesn't tell the whole story. In the early 2000s, Nintendo had built an audience for the Legend of Zelda franchise consisting mainly of Japan and America. While Wind Waker as a game was really good, the sales did not reflect this. In fact, this was the first time Nintendo had ever switched up the art style for the Legend of Zelda in 3D, opting for a more cartoony look using cell shading and whatnot. I mean, look at the two here. Look at how incredibly different they look. I would have been incredibly jarred as well. Wind Waker sold 4.6 million copies, which in isolation is pretty good, but compared to Ocarina of Time's 7.6 million copies, it had been considered a major flop. It seemed like the primary audience of Zelda, teenagers, didn't really vibe with the cartoony look and preferred the more realistic approach that Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask took. One of the directors of Nintendo, you may know another game he made. It's just a small indie game called Super Mario Brothers. You probably haven't heard of it. His name is Shigeru Miyamoto, and he said that Wind Waker didn't do enough to innovate or entice fans into playing the game. After the financial failure that was Wind Waker, Eiji Aonuma, you've probably seen him from the Nintendo Directs, took over the development of the Zelda game since Ocarina of Time and is still making bangers to this day. He said that he wanted to create another installment of the series, a sequel to Wind Waker. Taking Miyamoto's advice on inspiration, Aonuma would go on to completely switch up the controls for this next game, which would later become a huge criticism for it. Alright, history lesson over. Now that we know how we got here, just how well has the game stood the test of time? Let's find out. 1. Game design. Alright, let's address the elephant in the room. The controls. Remember when I talked about the controls being a bit controversial? Basically, when the game switched from GameCube and using the GameCube controller over to the Nintendo DS, unlike most games that opted for using the D-pad, they took a different approach. They opted for the stylus. And it's not just occasionally, alright? You do everything with the stylus, I'm serious. You move with the stylus, you fight with the stylus, you steer with the stylus, and to be honest, I could see why people really did not like these controls. I mean, I didn't either. They were incredibly jarring at first. After washing up on a new island, we immediately find Navi, who helps you through the game. Long story short, she basically acts as your cursor. You go around learning different aspects of the game, such as how you can use the stylus to make landmarks on the map, as well as how you can use it for combat and the different attacks you can use. If it wasn't apparent already, they're really trying to drive home this stylus thing. Moving on, let's talk about combat. In the Phantom Hourglass, the combat is pretty janky. The stylus can be very subjective at times, which leads to a lot of misinputs. When it came to combat, there were 3 different types of attacks you could use. Want to know how many I ended up using? 1. You wanna know why? Because the other two would misinput so much that I would end up getting myself killed. There was no point. I also ended up buying a shield from one of these shops, but I never properly understood how to use it. I mean, can you blame me? There was like no button for it. Now, in this sea of negativity, time for something positive. What I actually really did like about the game were the puzzles. Some of the puzzles in this game are genuinely really enjoyable, difficult at times, but still very fulfilling to finish. 2. Story. Alright, the first thing I want to talk about is the plot, which is, how do I say this? Kinda dumb. Starting the game, we are right off the back of Wind Waker, where Link has put in all this effort to save Zelda from Ganon. The start of the game basically talks about this plot of a ghost ship or something, right? People have been going missing and it's kidnapping people, and basically they're on a ship and they're trying to look for it. And then it shows up, and Zelda, aka Tetra in this game, she has a different design if you didn't play Wind Waker, decides to jump on it and immediately gets kidnapped. Bro, I put in all this effort to save you from Ganon, and the second you're safe, you jump on another ship immediately and get kidnapped? Bro, that was me? I wouldn't even save you, I'm not gonna lie. What's even worse is that Link actually ends up jumping onto the ship, grabbing it. He doesn't end up having enough upper body strength to actually pull himself onto the ship, and he just falls in the water. It's not great. It's not great. So, the mission for this game, find the ghost ship and save Zelda. In order to find the ghost ship, we are told to look for a sailor named Lineback. We get some information from people at a bar that Lineback is currently at the Temple of the Ocean King. Now, this is pretty relevant because one of those Reddit posts I was talking about earlier actually talked about this temple and how infuriating it was. So I headed in, expecting an incredibly difficult temple, only to be kind of underwhelmed. In the Temple of the Ocean King, there are 2 kinds of tiles, safe tiles and non-safe tiles. You can look at them on screen right now. Staying on safe tiles will allow you to maintain your HP, and non-safe tiles slowly drain your life force away. Although it was kind of tricky at first, it was pretty fun. Yet again, puzzles are really good in this game. I started wondering why this section of the game got so much hate. So we finally head out to sea and get to experience what made this series so popular to begin with. The sailing, that amazing music, and wait a minute. Oh my God, my goat from Breath of the Wild, Beetle! I think he was in these earlier games. Anyway, we're getting off track. We landed on this brand new island to look for someone who can help us with getting to the ghost ship. We head into one of the houses and see someone asking for help. In order to free her, you have to call out to her, which on a DS would be pretty easy, but considering I'm playing on an emulator, this was impossible. I spent nearly 30 minutes trying to figure this out, and eventually my solution was just screaming into the mic. Game is mid. Can't even play it on an emulator. Hello? Blow. It worked. Finally, we proceeded to the Temple of Fire. Full of fun puzzles, fire traps, multiple levels, and even a new weapon. I found this temple incredibly enjoyable. Other than this one area, but that's just me. Oh my god, now's my chance. Yes! No! What do you mean it has to obey physics? It's lame. After progressing through all the floors, we reached the final boss, Blaze, the Master of Fire. And after a hard, well-earned fight, another fairy called Leaf joins our party. A fairy that apparently served this Ocean King. We headed back home, and Leaf actually suggests that we go to the Temple of the Ocean King again. On the way there, the old man that seemed to know a bit more than we initially thought comes with us to the temple and helps us receive, drumroll please, the Phantom Hourglass. Ah yes, time for my favorite part, the Temple of the Ocean King Round 2. Initially, this temple had 2 kinds of areas, safe tiles and non-safe tiles. However, with the Phantom Hourglass, no longer do you lose HP on the non-safe tiles, but rather you have a 10-minute time limit that slowly drains every time you're on the non-safe tiles. Oh, what? That should be easy then, right? Wrong. I decided to make this a completely different section in the video because of how absolutely terrible this section is. That's right, that dude on Reddit, he was spitting. Instead of 1 floor, now there are like 4 or 5, each level getting progressively harder. Sounds cool, right? Until you add the fact that 1, you're on a time limit, 2, there are no checkpoints, and 3, there are guards on some of the lower levels that if they hit you, they don't just take away your HP. No, that would be too easy. They take away some of your time. It's pretty alright for the first couple runs, and then once you start getting more and more frustrated as you want to get to the lower levels, get back to where you were, you start making mistakes, and you get punished hard. Okay, so I think I just spent 8 minutes trying to get back to the floor, trying to save time, but I think I ended up wasting time. I only have 2 minutes on this floor, so oh my god. This is rough. Okay, I get why this sucks now. Oh my god, I messed up. I wish it was based off of how many times they killed you or something. This is just cruel. Yeah, it wasn't a fun time. In fact, this is what made me drop the game. I dropped it. Simple as that. So with my 10 hours or so of gameplay, my scientific conclusion: positives. Pretty cool puzzles and fun art. However, on the negative side, I think the controls were really bad. The music, other than the sailing theme, pretty lackluster. And that temple, well, that was just straight up traumatizing. To answer the question, is it trash? Not really. I'd give it like a 5 out of 10, but for the standard of Zelda games, yeah, it's pretty trash.